Monday, International Women's Day. We have some special guests. Today on International Women's Day, the President signed 2 executive orders. The first establishes the White House Gender Policy Council to ensure that the Biden administration advances gender equity and equal rights and opportunity for women and girls. The second directs the Department of Education to review all of its existing regulations, orders, guidance, and policies for consistency with the administration's policy to guarantee education free from sexual violence. To talk about these executive orders, we're thrilled to have 2 newly named co-chairs of the Gender Policy Council, Julissa Reynoso and Jennifer Klein. Julissa is the Chief of Staff to the First Lady. She was the Ambassador of the United States to Uruguay from 2012 to 2014 and served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Central American, Caribbean, and Cuban Affairs. In addition to being a co-chair, Jen is the Executive Director of the Gender Policy Council. She was previously Chief Strategy and Policy Officer at Time's Up and a board member of the International Center for Research on Women. Both of our guests have very busy days and a hard stop, so I'll be the bad cop, but they're happy to take some questions. So with that, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Julissa Reynoso. I'm Chief of Staff to Dr. Biden, and with Jen Klein, co-chair of the newly established Gender Policy Council. It's a real privilege and honor for me to be able to lead this effort with Jen, who is really a legend in this field. Today on International Women's Day, President Biden signed the two executive orders to ensure gender equality and equity throughout the federal government, which is a high priority of the Biden-Harris administration. Hoy, en el Día Internacional de la Mujer, el presidente Joe Biden firmó 2 órdenes ejecutivas para asegurar la igualdad y equidad de género en el gobierno federal de los Estados Unidos, un tema de alta prioridad para la administración Biden-Harris. The first executive order will formally establish the Gender Policy Council within the Executive Office of the President, with an explicit role in both domestic and foreign policy development. We know that the full participation of all people, including women and girls, across all aspects of our society is essential to the economic well-being, health, and security of our nation and of the world. This is a matter of human rights, justice, and fairness. Es un tema de derechos humanos, justicia, y igualdad. It is also critically important to reducing poverty and promoting economic growth, increasing access to education, improving health outcomes, advancing political stability, and fostering democracy. The White House Gender Policy Council will be an essential part of the Biden-Harris administration's plan to ensure we build a more equal and just democracy by aggressively protecting the rights and unique needs of those who experience multiple forms of discrimination, including people of color, and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people. A year into COVID-19, it is clear that women have been disproportionately impacted by the combined public health crisis, ensuring economic crisis, and caregiving crisis. The pandemic has exacerbated barriers and have historically impacted women and girls. As the country continues to grapple with the pandemic and reckons with the scourge of systemic racism and discrimination, President Biden knows that we need a government-wide focus on uplifting the rights of all women and girls. The Gender Policy Council will tackle a number of issues. We will work to combat systemic bias and discrimination, including sexual harassment. We will focus on increasing economic security and opportunity by addressing the structural barriers of women's participation in the labor force, decreasing wage and wealth gaps, and addressing the caregiving needs of American families and supporting care workers. We will ensure access to comprehensive health care. We will strengthen efforts to prevent and respond to gender-based violence and develop a national action plan that establishes a government-wide approach, both domestically and globally. We will promote equity and opportunity in education and leadership, and will work to advance gender equality globally through diplomacy, development, trade, and defense. Hoy en día es mi gran orgullo poder ser parte de esta gran iniciativa y es una prioridad para nuestra administración promover la igualdad y la calidad de género a nivel doméstico y a nivel internacional. Muchas gracias a todos por escucharme. Con esto se lo paso a mi colega Jennifer Klein. With this, I pass the podium to my colleague, Jen Klein. Thank you.
Thanks, Julissa. This will be a whole of government approach that Julissa and I are thrilled to lead, and I'm going to talk today a little bit more about the details and operation of the Council. The executive order requires the Council to submit to the President a government-wide strategy for advancing gender equity and equality in the United States and an annual report to measure progress on implementing that strategy. The strategy will guide the administration's work to advance domestic and global gender equity and equality and rights and opportunity for women and girls. And the strategy will evaluate and make recommendations to improve policies and programs, budgets, and data collection across agencies and across the White House, all with a gender lens. We'll also be involved in policymaking on a range of issues, including those that Julissa just outlined. We're excited about the expertise that we have, that our dedicated staff brings to improve our nation's commitment to preventing and responding to gender-based violence, which, as many of you know, has long been a priority and a commitment of President Biden. The executive order designates a special assistant to the president and senior advisor on gender-based violence on the council staff. And in addition, we'll have at least 2 additional special assistants to the president for gender policy who'll work on a number of issues, including the ones that Julissa outlined. One of the special assistants will focus specifically on policies to advance equity for Black, Indigenous, Latina, and women and girls of color. In all of our work, every step of the way will be aligned and fully integrated with the racial equity work headed up by the Domestic Policy Council. We'll also work closely with the Cabinet, most of whom are named as members of the Council, and each of whom will name a senior-level designate to the Council, and with staff on all policy councils in the White House and with the Office of Public Engagement. And in addition to those within the government, we'll work with partners outside government, nonprofit and community-based organizations, state and local and tribal organizations, the private sector, foreign governments, and multilateral organizations. The second executive order that the President signed this morning focuses on policies, advancing policies to guarantee education free from sexual violence. The Title IX EO directs the Department of Education to review all of its existing regulations, orders, guidance, and policies to ensure consistency with the Biden-Harris administration's policy that all students be guaranteed education free from sexual violence. The Secretary of Education will consider suspending, revising, or rescinding, or publishing for notice and comment proposed rules suspending, revising, or rescinding those agency actions that are inconsistent with the policies of the administration. It's the policy of the Biden-Harris administration that all students should be guaranteed an educational environment free from discrimination on the basis of sex, including in the form of sexual harassment, which encompasses sexual violence, and including discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. The order also recognizes that students sometimes experience discrimination based on race, disability, and national origin, and that LGBTQ+ students experience significant amounts. Finally, the administration also takes seriously the responsibility to ensure that procedures are fair and equitable for all involved. These 2 executive orders together are a statement of the commitment of the Biden-Harris administration to advancing gender equality and equity. We'll be working urgently to ensure that both here in the United States and globally, gender and gender identity do not predetermine opportunity and outcomes, and that all people, including women and girls and those who face other forms of discrimination, can thrive. And we're happy to take a few questions.
Okay. Amr, go ahead.